Okay, let's get our key, our hair, and our fill. Hey, what's up everyone? My name is Nigel, and in today's video we are going to be taking a look at the Panasonic S5 and comparing it against a more cinema-centric camera, the Sony FX6. I'm more looking at like the usability differences and some of the subtle differences in the image that would make you want to go for one or the other. There's also a lot of things that I take into consideration when I'm trying to choose a camera. Things like ergonomics, ease of use, and how easy the image is to work with in post. I kind of want to talk about a couple of the things about the Panasonic S5 that I've been getting some questions about, and one of them is the autofocus, which is the one thing that I kind of left out of my S5 video that I released pretty recently, which you can check out right up there. The autofocus is something that a lot of people have been asking about, so I just kind of wanted to address it really quick. So I found that the face tracking autofocus actually works fairly well. Panasonic still uses the contrast detection based autofocus, so it's not ever going to be as good as phase detection or dual pixel like Canon. So you can't really be expecting much, but when you're using face tracking, it does work. The only caveat is you have to be using the camera in APS-C mode. As you can see in these examples, I have the camera in APS-C mode and it is finding my face and tracking it pretty well. It's definitely not as good as anything from Sony or Canon, but I think that if you were gonna use this camera in a vlog style situation, or maybe just like a talking head setup like this, and you just wanted to use face tracking so that you could keep yourself in focus and you didn't have to always, be checking focus peaking or something like that, then it is usable. But again, using it in APS-C mode, I think kind of defeats the purpose of having a full frame camera in the first place. So that is just one thing that I did want to address. So now let's go into looking at the footage from the Panasonic S5 side by side with the Sony FX6. So to keep things fair, I did shoot in the highest quality possible on the LUMIX S5, and on the Sony FX6, we shot in S-Log3 4K 10-bit. So big thanks to my buddy Jared who provided the FX6 for this test. And in this shot right here, we just kind of wanted to test the skin tone rendering. And as you can see, both of these cameras look almost exactly the same. And I don't really see a very big difference in either of them. I think that they both look great. So in this shot, we just kind of wanted to test the dynamic range of both of these cameras. So Jared was standing in the shadow and I was trying to expose for the background, which was pretty bright, and as you can see, I can still bring up the shadows and keep the background down, and it still looks great. So I think both of these cameras did really well in this situation. Now, one thing about the Sony FX6 is that it has internal NDs, which is such a convenient thing to have, and all I had was a variable ND filter, and so I kind of just wanted to see how both of these cameras would render the sky, one having internal NDs and then the other having a screw-on ND at the end of the lens. And these are the results from both of these cameras. This is the Panasonic S5 and this is the Sony FX6. Now, honestly, I feel like unless you pointed it out, you wouldn't really be able to tell that much. I know a lot of people talk about how like the internal NDs do provide a much better image, and I feel like in some situations you can probably tell a lot easier, but in this test, I didn't really see that big of a difference. And honestly, this has never really been something that I've complained about from an image standpoint. I've always been more frustrated with just having to screw on and screw off the variable NDs from my lens, and that's what's most annoying to me. Sure, there's that X pattern, but if you get a good enough variable ND filter, you really aren't going to experience that. So before we go into our other tests, I do want to talk a little bit about today's sponsor, which is Skillshare. So if you haven't heard of Skillshare before, it is an online learning community for creative and curious people. Skillshare has thousands of inspiring classes, whether it be for photography, video, and design. Skillshare is the perfect place to go if you want to gain more knowledge on a certain subject. One class that I would definitely recommend if you are just getting into video editing and you want to use Adobe Premiere like me, there's a really great class called Learn Premiere Pro and Edit a How-To Video for Beginners. Now, in this class, Halise shows you all of the basics of editing within Premiere Pro. So this is a great class to take if you're just getting started, and Halise kind of takes you step by step and shows you all the fundamentals for making a video for YouTube. So that's one class that I would definitely recommend. Something really cool is that the first 1,000 people to click the link in the description below are gonna get a free trial of a premium Skillshare membership. And even after that trial is done, an annual plan is only like $10 a month, so it's a no-brainer. Once again, big thanks to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Now, next up is Ergonomics. Now, I personally like hybrid cameras like this, but there definitely is something to be said about having a professional video camera. Like, the FX6 feels so good to hold and everything is in a perfect spot. There's multiple record buttons. There's a button for literally everything, and it feels like you're holding an actual video camera. Whereas the Panasonic S5, people usually think that you're a photographer or something like that, even though I would argue more video focused people are buying the S5 than photographers are. So again, as far as ergonomics goes, I think it really is just personal preference. I personally like small hybrid cameras like this, but for a full-time freelance cinematographer like my buddy Jared, he definitely prefers having a video-focused camera when he's doing client work. Now, there is one thing that the Panasonic S5 has that the Sony FX6 doesn't, and that is in-body image stabilization. So as you can see in these tests, the S5 definitely does have the advantage over the Sony FX6. But one thing about the FX6 is that when you're doing handheld stuff, because it's so big and the rig that Jared had on it was such a, like a bulky rig that actually added some weight, the handheld movement from a Sony FX6 is actually a little bit more natural feeling to me than having something like the S5. Obviously the S5 I think is a lot smoother, but the FX6, if you were gonna be doing handheld stuff and you wanted it to be looking a little bit more rough and like a documentary, then having a big camera like that can actually pull off that effect. But you can rig this S5 up and make it a little bit more bulky. So why don't we do that real quick? So this is a little rig that I have for the S5. This is a small rig cage and a Move Cam top handle. Now, typically I don't like cages that go around the right side of a camera, mostly because I feel like most cameras have pretty nice feeling grips and I don't really want a big piece of metal right here. But actually this small rig cage for the S5 actually kind of form fits to the right hand grip of the S5 and it doesn't actually feel bad to hold. And right here where you put your thumb gives you a little bit of extra grip, which I like. So this is a great little rig for the S5. So again, my overall conclusion is that these are just different cameras for totally different types of filmmakers. I personally like smaller cameras like this that I can rig out if I need to or strip down and just go on a hike with. Whereas my buddy Jared, again, he is a full-time freelance cinematographer and he's shooting all the time. And he really does need a video-centric camera, and that's why he went for the Sony FX6. But there is really big price differences between the S5 and the FX6. The S5 is a $2,000 camera for the body, and the Sony FX6 is around $6,000 for the body. So that's a pretty big price difference, and I feel like for most people, they're gonna be a lot more happy with something like the S5 just for how much performance you're getting for the price. You're still getting a full frame sensor just like the FX6. You're still getting 10-bit 4K in log, full vlog on the S5 too, which is sweet. So yeah, that's not to say that the FX6 isn't a sick camera, and a big shout out to Jared for letting me go out and shoot with it. Yeah, I think that's all I have for you in today's video. Thank you so much for watching. And again, a big thanks to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. If you would like to check out more of my videos, you can click on either side of my face. Once again, thank you so much for stopping by, and I'll catch you all next time. Later.